Welcome to tonight's ASQ Innovation Technical Community Presentation. We have innovation for your solution to weathering uncertainty with Ms. Grace Duffy. Each and every one of you are in for such a treat because you have an expert. You have an expert executive, you have an expert leader, you have an expert speaker, you have an expert trainer and teacher. Not only is she a CEO and a senior leader and has written a gazillion articles on quality leadership and organizational performance across the globe, but she has won medals for all of the different things that she has done across the world, be that quality. She's won Quality Person of the Year. She has won International Women of the Year, and especially she has helped mentor, tutor, coach, be your champions and advocates of, I would harbor a guess, thousands, if not tens of thousands of people around the globe. And so we are welcoming tonight our own Miss Grace Duffy. So I will invite you now to take it away, Grace, for your presentation. And we will, at the end of your presentation, we will come back to this deck and just invite them to our next events. Over to you, Grace.
Dr. Farrell, you are too kind. And I do appreciate this opportunity. And it is a good topic. And I really appreciate those of you who put something in the chat. This McKinsey article really got my attention because I'm not generally that wonderful in innovation, but it really prompted me. So let me try and share my screen. And let me work through this. So, okay, I want my entire screen. And Rhonda, you get me window. There we go. And let me bring this thing up. Let me make sure I'm where I need to be. Innovation. Now we just did this, Rhonda.
Yes,
Entire
I think
screen.
what you're looking, I think you were sharing just the PowerPoint application, Grace.
That's what I want. PowerPoint, does that show?
Not quite yet.
Okay, we just did this and I have to figure this out. The share content thing is still going around doing its little thing. So we've been through this before.
Yeah. I think if you press share and then look to your right, you might have to scroll down. There you go. You're perfect.
Okay, that's good. So now if I bring this up, can you see the slide?
Yes. We are seeing there. Beautiful.
Fantastic. You just have to keep me going. All right, I'm going to share the presenter view. Sometimes in Zoom it shows up, sometimes it doesn't. But I'm delighted if you can see the notes that I put in as I developed this presentation based on an article at McKinsey Company, who does an awful lot of work in innovation and in expanding market opportunities in an area of disruption in the current environment that we're in. So I really wanted to share this. And I know that Rhonda has been sharing little pieces of this and some of the ideas we've discussed in the monthly leadership meetings and in some of the town halls that you've had. So I wanted to put these thoughts together with you and share. And then I'm hoping that there will be enough time, if I don't talk you to death, there will be enough time for us to have a little conversation, because for some of you, frankly, you're beyond this. And so you can share where you have been in expanding the boundaries of your organization in the face of disruption and in weathering uncertainty. So let's take a look at this. Now, the other piece is I cannot see the chat while I'm with you here. So feel free to interrupt me if there is a huge disruption that I have said that we want to talk through. So Rhonda, I'll let you kind of manage that one.
Thank you. I've got you.
I am so pleased. Thank you. I am a past chair of the Quality Management Division, and so I've been really delighted in being one of the sponsors for the Innovation Forum before you had a critical mass to become a division. So I've been so excited to see all of you expand and grow. It's been wonderful. Now, this McKinsey Company Strategy and Corporate Finance Practice paper came out in January of 2023. Now, I've shared the paper with Dr. Farrell, and if she has it or I'll send it back, it can be uploaded along with these slides onto the Innovation My ASQ website so that all of you can take advantage of the total paper. There was a quote that was in here that I thought was very critical for us as our point of entrance for this conversation. Innovation is key to capturing growth opportunities while creating more strategic options in a fast-changing environment. The issue is that when there is severe disruption, as we're seeing now, staying with the status quo is more risky than pushing the boundaries to see where you can go to exploit the changes that you're seeing around you. So there are some objectives that I want to share with you based on the article and based on some additional research that I found while I was putting these ideas together. We'll look at the current economic environment, and in all honesty, since January and now we're into June, that environment has gone even faster. So we'll look at some 5 pertinent essentials of innovation. And the other piece I've found is that there is not a standard set of essentials of innovation. Some of you have probably written your own essentials in your current paper. So I'll show you 2 different ones that I ran into during my research. Then we'll look at some innovation aspirations. What are our expectations? What are some of the risks and the opportunities? And then there's this balance between short and long-term innovations. And those of you who have studied Duran, you know that he talks about this continuous improvement as well as breakthrough. And that is so pertinent to what we're talking about right now. And then we want to encourage these emerging adjacencies. What are some of the tangencies that we're seeing in our SIPOC, in how we look at our supply and our value chain? So that's really where I want to go in the next 40 minutes or so. We're looking at an environment, certainly of disruption and uncertainty, and I'm sure many of you are just rolling your eyeballs saying, well, duh, Grace, I mean, you kind of know that. This new norm of beyond COVID-19, where we saw some horrendous supply chain problems, where organizations have had to come into different suppliers. We've had to look at how we can make do with what we have. And for those of you who can see the notes that I made, let me just go through these for a moment. Disruption and great uncertainty. All of us have run into this, but we're tempted to just protect what we have, to go hide in a corner, but we can't do that. There's not going to be a return to the normal that we thought there was going to be. There is a high-risk strategy today because we must move forward. We can't go back. It's just not the same. We need those breakthrough, but there's also a certain amount of continuous improvement we can look at. And I've got a couple of models that I've used for some years now that came out of a text that is no longer in print that I'll share with you in a bit. There's a 2021 New Business Building Survey that really sees how business leaders are expecting fully half of their revenues in the next 5 years to come from entirely new products and services, entirely new business opportunities. Hunkering down doesn't do it anymore. Companies really need to find emerging pockets of growth, and that's going to come with M&A. It's going to come with, not so much with mergers and acquisitions, excuse me. That's going to be a lower desire. We're going to expand into our own risk environments and look at that long-term success. So many of you now are writing about these risks and required actions, and I'm hoping you'll share those in the chat with each other. And feel free to put your thoughts in that chat. I can't see your comments, as I said, but Rhonda will be able to support you with those. And then as we come in, and Rhonda is our host, so she will interrupt me. And if we need to stop and talk, then we'll share some of your experiences. So I've talked about the structural supply chain issues that we've seen over the last 3 years. The interest rates have been rising, although we're seeing now that we think they may be ameliorating somewhat. I just rolled over some CDs, and we're seeing that now in the probably year-long CDs going into 2024, they're probably going to start dropping. Where I had a 5.35% rate on a CD, when I just rolled it now down to 5.3. So it looks like we're going to start backing off of the Fed's desire to ameliorate or to reduce some of the issues or the pressures with inflation. We've had the sustainability pressures. We've seen some bank failures because they really wanted to encourage sustainability. They really invested ESG companies, and they found that it was a risk, and unfortunately that risk was not timed quite properly. And so we're having to really back up and say we want to encourage ESG, but the timing isn't quite right yet. And that balance has been a real challenge. So where we are is caught between that defensive and offensive business models. If we stay defensive only, we're going to get caught in our shorts. We really need to take those risks. And the balances are really industry specific. It's really been kind of strange. Not strange, I'm sorry. It's been frightening in some cases, and certainly challenging, to come back to bullet number 4. We've been driven by external events, but that's not new. We've always had to have our antenna up and look at what externally is coming in. That's what SWOT analysis is that you and I teach, but it's not business as usual, and we know that. There's an exhibit 1 that comes out of this McKinsey Company article, and I hope you're able to see this. And I've put some additional blue arrows on this. If we look at this resilience, this sustained resilience that have led to both growth and productivity coming out of the McKinsey article, those organizations that have been willing to both grow revenue and reduce operating costs. In other words, those of us who have invested in Lean and Six Sigma, where you've looked at reducing your expenses, but also in looking at expanding your markets and increasing opportunities for revenue. Those are the highest growth rates. And you can see on this chart that the dual top performers who have done both have really push the envelope. They have been able to show this total shareholder results as an index from 2007. They have really come up significantly in their shareholder results. The next are the ones who have done growth only. Now that is interesting, where those of us who only want to go lean and defensive posture have come in third. Those who have taken more of a risk in expanding their growth opportunities have come in slightly higher than those of us who have used lean only. Now notice also that those who have just hunkered down and done the standard, let's just keep on doing what we've done, have not done well at all. Now they've done okay, they haven't gone out of business, but look at the opportunity if you've been able to do both. Excuse me, I'll grab a drink of water here. So the start of that Great Recession in 2008, we've seen this both in North America and in European, where only controlling operating costs have really not done it. But we've had to combine that with prioritizing the revenue growth. And it's innovation in that revenue growth and also in the appropriate lean areas in understanding the best balance of expense to revenue, where that has really helped us in that long-term value creation. We've had a counter-cyclical where we can't just follow the cycles that we've had in the past. We've really had to try and break that standard. Note also from the McKinsey article that the North American and European companies controlled operating costs while also prioritizing revenue growth have delivered more value than their industry peers. So there really is a lesson for us to share. So let's see this. And I pointed out the next highest option is our lean business model, not the pure growth only. So here we go with this one. Now I was wrong. Watch me. The cost only has been right. I'm sitting here reading this own chart incorrectly. It's the cost only that has done better than the growth. So slap my mouth, forgive me. We have been able to manage our revenues, and we have been able to do that theory of constraints that Elihu Goldratt has had. So forgive me, even I have gotten confused with this. So don't feel badly if you are. So let's see where we go. Now, this chart is one I've used for a good long time that comes out of Dr. Joseph Duran, where there's a breakthrough versus continuous improvement. And we find that there's a combination of both of these over time. Breakthrough improvement, a revolutionary improvement in an area in a time of disruption, has really shown that if you can take these informed risks, we don't just want to throw risk to the caution to the wind. We really want to have informed, data-driven decision-making in this breakthrough improvement, the revolutionary improvement. And then we also have continuous improvement. And I know that there are several different approaches to innovation. There's this process innovation that is continuous improvement, where we add our process, we look at the best ways to evolve that process based on the external events. And I've got a model coming up that we'll look at that will help with this. Then there's also the breakthrough improvement, where we say the continuous improvement model isn't getting us where we need to be. Do we need to do more benchmarking? Do we need to model after some of the other industries and other functional benchmarking that's going to allow us to take these giant steps, these nonlinear effects that happen at multiple levels? That again means we must be informed. We must understand what's going on. Now let's go into this. I went to the internet then, and I looked at the essentials of innovation based off the McKinsey article. And the first thing that showed up on the internet search, higher than the McKinsey one, were a Forbes magazine article on 8 essentials of innovation. Now, Forbes is a more conservative organization. McKinsey tends to be more forward-thinking, more risk-taking. And so I looked at the Forbes one, and it talked about these 8 essentials of innovation. And the first one certainly is what you and I are aware of, managing an extended knowledge pool. That's Murphy's know what you're doing. That's knowledge number one, always know what you're doing. So I tried to map these 8 Forbes to the McKinsey items and ran into some trouble. So let's take a look at these Forbes 8 essentials, because then I'm going to go to the next slide, and you're going to see that McKinsey views things differently. But you know, there's value in looking at each of these different interpretations. And I'm hoping that people on this call have also written your own papers on what the essentials of innovation are, because apparently there is no standard right now. Number one for Forbes says, know what you're doing, managing extended knowledge pool. The second one, enhanced configurability in innovation management. That says be flexible. That's agility. Supporting the innovation continuum. That says you've got a continuation from the process innovation into the breakthrough or redesign innovation. Responding to mobility. Basically, we know there's disruption. We know there are external events that are driving our business and driving our marketability. Let's look at that and take these into consideration in our planning. Enhancing collaboration and employee engagement. That's more delegation, that's more teamwork, that's more employee involvement, that's more enthusiasm in our employees, that's more self-managed teams, the collaboration we've talked about. An accelerated innovation cycle, that says we probably need to move faster. We need to take a little bit more informed risk. And then the move to strategic options building. Look out and see what other strategic options there are. Do more of the benchmarking, do more of the research, understand more what your options are. Go back and do a SWOT analysis more often than every 6 months or every year. And then come up with an architecture that's going to allow you to look at different elements of innovation and see if you can push your risk bubble. There's a really good exhibit we'll look at in a bit that comes out of this McKinsey article that shows the difference between where your risk boundaries are if you're in the continuous improvement innovation cycle or whether you're in the breakthrough innovation cycle. And then here is the Forbes link if you want to use that to get more information about the Forbes item and where we're going. So if we look at this, there's more than one set of these essentials of innovation. So I took the exhibit out of the McKinsey Company, 8 Essentials of Practices. They are not the same. And you'll see in this bar chart that there is a top quartile of innovation approaches. Now, what the McKinsey and Company article did was look at 8 attributes that are present in every big company based on a survey they did in 2021. And the companies that are seen as high performers in product, process, and business model innovation, these essentials, although they're overlapping because there is a continuation in how businesses, I mean, that's systems thinking, that's organizing yourself as a system rather than individual processes. And they're innovative and iterative and not necessarily sequential. But there's 2 different groups. The first 4, and you can see that McKinsey thought all 4 of these are critical in this time of disruption. We want to aspire to new market opportunities. We want to choose the most effective of those opportunities for our own mission, vision, and values. We want to discover what new opportunities there are and how we can exploit them. And then we want to evolve our existing processes. And you see, I added the term continuous and pointed to the evolution, because the other part that McKinsey focused on, even though it is not the most advantageous for the top quartile in this lower 4 of, let me see, the first 4, aspire, choose, discover, and evolve, are strategic and creative. Now the other 4, accelerate, scale, extend, and mobilize, are organizational in nature. It's how you are organizing your innovation pathway and your journey and how you're going to deliver those innovations. So the first 4 are strategic and planning, and then the other 4 are more operational or applications. And they're saying where the extend is the breakthrough approach to innovation, and they then partner that with the evolve in the continuous. So what we're seeing is that even though this bar chart identifies the top performer results, 5 of those practices are important today based on the McKinsey survey. Resetting the aspiration based on the viability of current businesses, choosing the right portfolio of initiatives, discovering ways to differentiate value propositions, and moving into the adjacencies. In other words, your SIPOC along your value chain, and we'll look at that in just a minute, and evolving your business models. But the other piece is don't just evolve your current business models, but extend them to include external partners. We're seeing more partnering than we used to. We're seeing more sharing and benchmarking. We're seeing more opening our kimono and our approaches to other organizations that may be able to help you. So according to McKinsey, these aspirations are combined with estimates of value where they should be generated for the business. So innovation target for growth should subsequently be cascaded down into the form of targets and timelines. And that's where you see this top 4, aspire, choose, discover, and evolve, then rotate into the applications for, yes, accelerate. We need to go faster in this area of disruption. We need to scale based on our risk preference and the size of our company and our ability to then involve capital investment. We've already talked about extend. And the mobilize is get your application going and don't wait. And so here we go, some more comments coming out of McKinsey. For many companies, difficult to innovate is not about the scarcity of new ideas. All of us can brainstorm, but where do you choose the right ideas to the support that you have in your capital and your resources and the scale of your organizational ability to then exploit them? So the balance of resources and value that benefits cost is the most in the portfolio of innovation initiatives. And this is what McKinsey is saying, more about managing risk than eliminating it. And that's where they're saying you don't want to hunker down. You really need to get forward and give it a try. And they need to talk about more about discovery. The innovation requires actionable and differentiated insights. And here's the evolve. Companies that want to innovate often need to reinvent their business. Well, yes, you in the innovation division have understood that all along, so I probably need to move forward. And then the extend, successfully innovate, external collaborations. We need to start sharing more. We need to be less risk averse with sharing our ideas with others. And that's really difficult for some, where you, especially as an entrepreneur, where you have your ideas and they have done so well for you in the past. Now you need to share those ideas with others and be able to come up with some level of trust with another organization, not to run off with your ideas. And that's difficult. So what we see here is this raise innovation aspiration. And this exhibit 2 says, as disruption increases, business as usual becomes riskier than innovation. And what that really says is that the relative growth potential, if we are looking only at incremental changes, and you'll see these half circles here, the first 2 half circles say, if we're going to work as business as usual, our organization is however big this half circle is. Our innovation based on our business as we see it now, innovation is all within existing processes. You can sort of see there's a shadow underneath or inside the half circle labeled innovation on the left-hand side of this exhibit. But if we look at using and exploiting the fundamental disruption, where there's a growth potential, you'll see that with business as usual, we are more flexible in expanding our ideas of business as usual. We call that pushing the envelope. And in that case, the innovation, see the shadow now for innovation where we are willing to take more risk, both inside the organization as we know it and outside, looking at partnerships. We see that the shadow now has moved out of the existing organization to beyond that into what they call the uncertainty range. We need to be less risk averse. And so this chart gives us an idea between Duran's continuous improvement and Duran's breakthrough idea. Now, this chart here for evolutionary change is one that I involved. I taught a course out of a book by Leroy Beach that was written, oh, heaven forbid, probably in 1992. It's been out of print for a long time. You might be able to get a reused version on Amazon. I have the book that I pulled apart years ago to make copies for classes that I taught in an advanced management class in the college where I was a chair and a dean. But I love these 2 models. This first one shows the evolutionary change. Now, what we look at here, if you are going to look at the continuous improvement model, there is a quality approach, a compatibility approach to how we are going to look at our business based on efforts from internal events or pressure from external events, excuse me. You and I in our company have cultures and beliefs. It is who we are. And that culture and belief then informs the vision and goals of our strategic plan. Then that strategic plan, the vision and goals, then drive the activities and the plans and actions coming out of our strategic plan. Well, what happens during the year or the 18 months of the strategic horizon, the external events put pressure on the decisions that we've made. And so we have to look at the goal or the agenda that we put into our strategic plan, and we have to do a gap analysis with the forecast of where we see our market coming in the near and somewhat medium future of where we're going. And then we need to see, are the plans we have now compatible with the forecast of where we think our business environment is going to be? And we come out with a decision. And that's called a quality decision. We see that we have maybe a minimal gap, or we have a gap that we can deal with in a reasonable way with minimal disruption. And that's really an evolutionary change. That's sort of a process-based continuous improvement. Now, that's fine, but what we're seeing is that those external events, when we look at them, have become more rapid. Those external events are much more disruptive than they have been. So what we're seeing is that our culture and beliefs may be the same. Those top three boxes on this chart, culture and beliefs have the same, vision and goals may be the same, and the activities in our current strategic plan, the plans and actions, may still be there written in our strategic plan for the year. But external events are hitting us much harder now. And so what we're seeing is that there are some decisions we need to make for the future that still meet that quality test of, yeah, we can still make a decision that's compatible with our own preferences, with what our board of directors is comfortable with, where we are, and the options and ideas when we brainstorm or when we go through our 6-month update or quarterly review or our quarterly SWOT analysis says, yes, we can still do some process improvement. We can still do some balancing of what our existing plans are. But we're finding now that we have to take more risk. We're looking at multiple options or survivors of the different benchmarking or brainstorming ideas that are coming out of the board, that are coming out of our departments and divisions that are saying, no, our markets are changing much more quickly. We really need to take more risk. And when you take more risk, your decision making goes from a qualitative decision process into a quantitative decision process, because you want to make sure that you may have consensus. It may be more difficult to have collaborative decisions. You may really have to go through some intense disagreement among your decision makers. And that's when you want to have multi-voting. You might want to have more than just a yes-no vote on, do we decide to do this? You might really have to rank your options. You might really have to go through some nominal group techniques, the more quantitative decision-making and tests that you have. And you're going to come out with some decisions that some people are not comfortable with. At that point, there may be some that you're still going to come with just everybody's happy with that one survivor decision and you're going to move forward. But generally, you're going to get more contentious decisions. That's when you write down the minutes of who was part of that decision, who agreed with that decision, that they finally agreed or they were voted down. Much what you're seeing in our Congress, in the Senate and the House of Reps, where you have a vote and you take a vote and you write that there were 218 who agreed with this, 204 did not, it carried, and you know who voted against it, you know who voted for it, so that those who come out with it later say, I never voted for that, you got it in the minutes, oh yes you did, you said you would support us, now please continue to do so. So it becomes more contentious and more uncomfortable. And some of the examples of companies who didn't necessarily do that well, I was thinking about a nephew of mine who used to work at Radio Shack when he was in high school, make money, get to save to go to college. He worked in Radio Shack and did very well. But as technology moved more quickly, Radio Shacks started to die. They started to disappear. If you remember, if you're old enough to go into a Radio Shack, there were so many plastic baggies on the pegboard, on the wall of this transistor and this connector and that relay and whatever it was. And you could build your own color bar TV generator to make sure that the color was right on your color TV. No more. That changed when we got rid of the great big TVs with the big bolus in the back of the TV, and then we got these flat screen TVs, and technology is now a big black box, and we have no idea of what it is. Radio Shack went away. Now I think it still has a website. I think you can still order some stuff, but they just cannot maintain the storefronts. But Best Buy came in. Now they even had to rebuild themselves a little bit, but they came up with these new black box electronics. And in order to stay competitive, they come up with the Geek Squad, where you don't go to them anymore. You can call the Geek Squad, and you may be part of them, where you can go out and make calls on people to help them get their internet set up, to get them set up their new computers, to get them figure out Windows 11, whatever it is. The world and the market has changed significantly in how we've been able to deal with the rapidity or the rapid change in technology and what we're doing. Remember Polaroid? Now, if you have one of the original Polaroid cameras, you can get a lot of money for that thing because they're just not making them anymore. And Kodak really had to rebuild, just nasty in the changes of what happened. So those external events are really critical, and we're having to deal with them more. Now, here's another chart coming out of something that I pulled off the internet, the Innovation Management Collaborative, and many of you probably are aware. In fact, the owner of Creative Realities may even be on this call. But how do we balance short and long-term innovation now in this area of disruption? Now, on the left, I put in an equation that I have used for some time, and those of you who have taken a finance course or economics at the M1, revenue minus expenses gives you your profit if you're in a capitalist environment. Revenue minus expenses or cash flow minus expenses equals your managing capital or whatever it is if you're not for profit in what you do. But you'll see there are two axes here. The company has to approach the market, and now we are a global market. We've had to now look at our position within the world. And so there's two pieces to this. There's our competencies, and as our competencies grow, we can go from an incremental improvement to a breakthrough improvement. And if we know how to address and benchmark globally, we can transform our business, because that is going to drive this value creation on the x-axis, where our company grows into more market opportunities and then becomes further competitive within the world. So in times of disruption or deep uncertainty, we have to balance the short-term innovations at cost reduction and the breakthrough bets. So renovations to design and processes produce those savings, and then we roll those savings into the breakthrough and transformational opportunities. So we don't just address only the expense side. In order to be one of those top performers, we really have to address all of these things. We have to lower revenues or lower expenses, reduce the revenues, because that's how we're going to reduce or improve our profit. So let's look at this. Here's another exhibit out of the McKinsey Company article. What are the emerging adjacencies? Adjacent says tangential. We have suppliers, we have customers that are attached to us, are part of our value chain. And when we do a SWOT analysis, we realize that we can have better strengths if we open up to our suppliers. We can improve our opportunities with those same suppliers by looking at a longer term or a broader horizon of what we share with those suppliers or with our customers. So that pervasive uncertainty is an opportunity to look for diversification or expansion opportunities outside our core businesses. We want to look at those opportunities in adjacent markets. If you think, you've probably seen the Kroger delivery vehicles in your neighborhood. In Florida, Kroger does not do business here in Florida, and yet our neighborhood has Kroger delivery vehicles. My sister uses HelloFresh, which is a delivery of not only groceries, but full packed meals, the components of meals, the ingredients of meals packed in dry ice. They come to her front door along with the recipe so that she can put these meals together. I've watched her when I visit, and she puts them together, and she has everything she needs in that box. They're in you go to a Chinese restaurant and you get these little packets of soy sauce or packets of hoisin sauce or whatever. There are packets of spices. There are packets of vinegar. There are packets, whatever, in this box. Now, it doesn't make the stuff any faster to cook. I'll tell you, it still takes her 40 minutes to put dinner together, but she has it all right there. And so there's so much diversity and ideas that are coming out of these things. So the economic outperformers showing up in this exhibit 3 are almost twice as fast as low performers in meeting their market opportunities. So if we look at this exhibit, it shows the share of sales from products and services that did not exist a year ago by economic performance. Now, there are only 727 responses to this particular survey. There's an N is 727 on this one. Now, the share of the organizations who say they're taking innovative actions were a lot more. There's 1,083 that were valid. But you'll see that those in the top decile, the top 10% of those who shared their sales and pushed the envelope were 21% out of the 100% of all the responders, where those who did not expand were 12%, and the 21% did expand by 1.8 times. So go for it, give it a chance, take the risk. So then you're going to see here in the lower part of this chart, share the organizations taking innovative actions in performance. The top decile are the higher part of the range chart. This is a black and white chart here. But the top decile is much higher, and you'll see this average of 21 from the top decile coming down on created a dedicated innovation group. Then next, those who increase their R&D spending, even beyond those who set up their own dedicated innovation group, did very well in just increasing their R&D spending. Go out and try it, take higher risk, put that capital into research and development. And those who acquired new intellectual property did not do as well because they tried to acquire only. And you'll see later, if you read this article, that mergers and acquisitions alone did not respond as well or did not perform as well as those who were willing to expand their own markets and their own partnerships. Then we look at some new business models. So the sole proprietor to external partnerships, those of us like me who are sole proprietors, if I had wanted to, if I had not been really at the end of my career where I'm mentoring others, as Dr. Farrell said, I really might have joined, and I had some requests from others to join their organizations or to partner. And in fact, I have partnered with several in the last couple of years in writing new books and in doing some additional work. The external partnerships are working incredibly well, but that means you can't be risk averse. You have to share some of your proprietary information with others. So you need to be careful who you're sharing with. We need to be cooperative. We need to be more collaborative. If you look at this chart, this is Exhibit 4. Top economic performers were more effective at partnering with other organizations. New partnerships created by organizations, performance in 2020 to 2021. That was the last year that there was solid, validated data for the McKinsey article. It came out in January of 2023. So you can see that they needed to get solid data to be able to do this analysis. But they say that nearly half, well, 46% of the top economic performers stated they created new partnerships. Well, and that's during COVID, during that Great Recession. All others who did not create the new partnerships only expanded by 33%. That doesn't mean that they lost business, but they did not do as well as those who created new partnerships. And the same way of partnerships that were very successful in accessing other companies' talent pools. In other words, sharing skills, benchmarking, and then in creating partnerships and not just acquiring. Again, 35% of those were more successful, and the 20% were somewhat successful, but not significantly. And here is where the article identifies there were fewer mergers and acquisitions, simply because I suspect that the capital wasn't there during that Great Recession. It had to do something else. And they expanded upstream and downstream through that SIPOC. And they were both local to national or international. And it depends on the scale of what you're doing, certainly. So if we look at the SIPOC to explore adjacencies, that's really the best place to do it. If we go back to Dr. Deming, where he really talked about listen to your customers, voice of the customer, understand how you can help solve your customers' issues and what we can do, it became more advantageous for us during the last 3 years to look at our processes and then share them with our customers so that the customers were more comfortable giving us their idea of where they were going. So we got more valid and stronger voice of the customer. In the same case, we became the voice of the customer to our suppliers. And we had to trust each other more. And there may be instances, and I'm sure that you can find them, where that fell apart, where that blew up on people if there was not the kind of trust and integrity that we expect to have in business. Certainly, unfortunately, that's going to be there, but that's part of the risk. It's part of the risk we know about in ISO, and there's part of the risk that we know about in the Baldrige activities that we've done. So we've really seen that it paid significant returns on those organizations that were willing to take that informed risk. So let me back up a little bit and let's open this up. I'll do this. What do you think? And let me come back to this next slide, and then I'm going to hand it back to Rhonda to see what's going on in the chat and where I've confused things, where I've made sense, where I need to backpedal, and maybe you just disagree with how I view these things. So if we look at this, what's your call to action? If we look at these different options, what is the best innovation approach for you right now? Is it the revenue growth? Is it expense reduction? Is it that combination of both? Have you expanded your partnerships? Were you successful in mergers and acquisitions? It's not to say that you couldn't do it, but just the surveys that Forbes and McKinsey have done have showed that there was less of that in the last 3 years. How much have you done in incremental design, or how much have you done through breakthrough and innovation? And where have I not even seen further options in what we can do? So let me see, I can stop sharing and we can come back. And Rhonda, you can maybe facilitate where we want to go from here. We've got about 10 minutes or so.
Thank you so much, Grace. So again, a big round of applause for Miss Grace Duffy for her phenomenal presentation tonight. And I think we had someone respond, Justin Smith respond in the chat here with regard to expense reduction, and another one, Crystal Brown, say revenue growth. Maybe Grace, given that, right, you have this push and pull of both stuff. We're trying to, right, create that balance, optimize portfolio of product and services to help our organizations grow and sustain in the long term. And then we're also looking at the ways we can pair cost reductions, expense reductions, savings, and really look at how we can harness innovation across the life cycle for there. Maybe we want to talk first. Justin pitched expense reduction. What have you seen perhaps with the clients that you're working with, Grace, in this innovation areas that's really helping them move the ball forward there?
What I found in a couple of my clients is, now one of them was building prototype communication equipment in a defense environment where there was funding that was government funded defense, and you know that if you have a good valid purpose for defense, that the money's there. And so they were able in the prototype to look at their expenses and then standardize the prototype so that they could more quickly go from the prototype early development, where you have just huge, unfortunately, amounts of waste because you aren't sure what your range of variation is going to be for that product, very quickly. And they asked me in to help them with that. We standardized processes. We identified exactly where the barriers were in this prototyping with this new communications device, and just shortened the cycle time and found ways to set up and identify the processes and validate them more quickly. So the expense reduction there in a prototyping environment was to reduce the cycle time, to go from the real nebulous, we just started this design, we don't know exactly what we're going to get, we're doing prefab, or we're creating our own parts, so there's an horrendous scrap loss and waste, into very quickly, no, we know the parts we need, we know how we can put this together, we know that we facilitated the assembly process here, and we shortened it more quickly. So the expense reduction there was very quickly getting from the prototype to the standardization to the assembly of this thing in a real job flow process. So that was one of them. Another one did get merged or acquired, in all honesty, with a larger electrical design firm. But unfortunately, that one, not unfortunately, I think it worked out very, very well, but it took longer than we expected. It was because there were some issues of employee turnover, simply because of the disruption. Some of the employees were not as risk tolerant as we would wish. So we had to be real careful on our approach and the human side of what we did with that particular employer. It ended up working out very well, but frankly, the cycle time was a little longer than we wanted it to be. I'd be very interested if some of the other folks on the call had some examples as well. Realize that at my level in my career, where I am backing off and turning down contracts now, those of you who have come into further contracts in the last year may have a better answer than I do.
I think we had a remark from Justin. He really loved your answer with regard to cycle reduction and waste elimination. And he says they too have focused there focused on waste reduction without looking at the, the whole spectrum of operations. So, kind of they go hand in hand, right? You can grow revenue and reduce costs by kind of taking that holistic view. So maybe, is there a specific, set of tools? I know you said you did process improvement. Is there, things, tools, or approaches that you would say particularly lend themselves well to engaging with the stakeholders and the clients or the customers or the executives from an innovation perspective, right? Because you said, hey, we have this balance of risk with growth, and then maybe how did you harness some of the innovation tool suite or principles to be able to help move them forward, Grace?
Very good question, Rhonda, and you're exactly right. We did. And I used some new tools and some very standardized tools that we've known for a long time. One of the first things I did with the prototyping group was use a tool that a colleague and I wrote a book about, validating a best practice a couple of years ago. It's called a quick scan approach, and it looks at the different criteria of how well you have organized your business using the plan, do, check, act cycle. And what it does is look at how you set your strategy, your vision, mission, values, and it looks at the total alignment of what you've done in your product development to make sure that you have expedited the development of the concept down into the application. And so we use this, and it's just 24 criteria that say, if you've done this, 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 and this, and you'll recognize it. Do you have a strategy? Have you measured it? Do you know what your processes are? Do you have your KPIs set? Are you going back and auditing, and what are you doing? And we did that. And we came up with some areas where we were weaker than we wanted to be. We were in the conference room for this Skunk Works group, and we had each of the vice presidents who were head of the different divisions. One was the operations, one was marketing, one was the research and development, the other one was the finance, and then the CEO was there with us, and the IT gentleman was there. And so we went through and figured out where our weak points were. Then we took those weak points and we used a standard failure mode and effects analysis of each of the areas that we knew we were weak on. And a huge one was documentation, because this was a prototype. We did not have enough written down to be able to reproduce what the wunderkind was doing in putting together this communication device. The guy was phenomenal, but he was doing it all in the back room of this office building, and the thing worked, but how could he share it with anybody else? And so we spent an afternoon figuring out the best way that we could write up the documentation, validate the process. And that's really rough when you're doing prototyping. You really have to trust that you've made some good decisions. But that worked to the point where they were able to take the activities out of the failure mode and effects analysis and set up a timeline. So we even came out with a Gantt chart of who's going to do what when, and set up the activities. And then after that, I didn't even have to drive to the next county for the meeting. We just did Zoom, and we just did reviews of where we were going. And it worked really, really well. I mean, I probably worked myself out of what could have been a really well-paying contract, but I didn't need to, because they could pick it up on their own and move forward with it. It worked really well.
Well, that is fantastic. And you have taken us to the end of our time tonight. Again, everyone, we just give a big hand to our wonderful Miss Grace Duffy for all the things she shares. I'm sure that the attendees would love to get your little cheat sheet if you, with your criteria, Grace. It sounds like you're building off of performance excellence and maybe some operational excellence in there. I'm sure they would love to learn more about that. If you would be so kind to share. I'm going to share my screen again.
Good. I will send the best practice presentation there's a presentation that I give about this tool, and I will send that to you, and you can put it on the innovation website.
Beautiful. Well, I just want to say thank you again for everyone who is able to join us this evening. We so grateful for your support of our monthly webinars. Again, we thank our wonderful host tonight, Grace Duffy, for all she does for ASQ across many organizational units, technical communities, divisions, student groups, next gen sections, our technical communities and other organizational units. Grace is really helping to bring people together to enhance quality, to enhance innovation, to enhance collaboration and communication, and these phenomenal events that she spearheads as well. If you liked Grace Duffy and her presentation tonight, you're gonna also love coming up what we have on deck for you. The 14th of July, Mr. Zubair Anwar with AI ML Innovation Application. So July 25th, try humor for a change, harnessing humor for creativity and innovation with Miss Karen Buxman. And then again on September 28th, elevating innovation, more impact and less stress with Miss Erin Urban. That will be the first in a series of 3 with her. If you are new to attending our ASQ Innovation Technical Community webinars, we invite you to learn more about our organization, and we celebrate our chair, Ms. Rebecca Mott, our chair-elect, Ms. Michelle Vargas, our secretary and treasurer, Ms. Jackie Jolly, and Mr. Larry Miller, who is also our past chair, with all of the phenomenal work that they're doing out in the ecosystem. If you liked this event, I apologize that it's not on the slide. We welcome you to an innovation conference in October in Naperville, Illinois. You can find more information on our MyASQ Innovation TC site. I will email this deck out to everyone so that you have that contact information. And of course, if you're interested in learning more about how you can either volunteer or be a future speaker or collaborate in some manner with the organization, please don't hesitate to reach out to our chair, Ms. Rebecca Mott at memberleader.asq.org. That is a wrap tonight. Again, thank you to our esteemed speaker, Miss Grace Duffy, and thank you all for attending, and we welcome you back in July for our next webinar. Good night to everybody, and wishing you a great rest of the week and a very safe and happy rest of the weekend. ASQ Innovation TC out for this evening.